AIM-listed Europa Oil Gas is an oil and gas exploration and production company which has revenue from onshore UK oil production to help fund what it calls high-impact exploration in Atlantic Ireland. It was awarded an asset to offshore Morocco just last month. Hugh Mackay is Chief Executive. He joins us now. Welcome, Hugh. You've also produced full-year numbers, of course, as well, which shows, I think, cash at 2.9 million on the balance sheet. You're in the process of going a farm out in the Irish business and so forth. So it looks like you've got everything sort of well organised. What do you say to investors as to where the company is at the moment? Okay, so
Looking at the numbers, we're in good shape. We have revenues. We've got production from onshore UK. Last year it was 91 barrels, produced a revenue of 1.7 million, and we've got 2.9 million pounds cash, and we've got no debt. The next significant increase in revenue could come from Wrestle. Wrestle's a discovery that we made, the Egdon-led joint venture made in 2014. We've got a planning inquiry on the 5th of November. The North Lincolnshire Council has withdrawn from that planning inquiry, so the participants are going to be the planning inspector and our barrister and witnesses. And the planning inspector will make a planning decision. It will follow the inquiry and should be by the end of the year. And then if it's positive, and I very much hope it will be, because we'll be going into this very well prepared, and don't forget that the council's planning officers recommended it for approval, then early in the new year we'll be swinging into action to put Wrestle into production. We expect that it's going to come on at 500 barrels a day gross. We've got 30%, so 150 barrels net to Europa. So if you think 91 barrels delivered a revenue of 1.7 million, then if we add on another 150, 240 million barrels, then we should be looking at a revenue between 3.5 and 4 million pounds. Not a company maker, but having cash is very important. And so we will be going into this planning inquiry very well prepared and to get the result that we want, which is planning permission.
Investors have been disappointed, haven't they, beforehand with the Wrestle decisions in the past. What is different this time around? I mean, you mentioned the people that will be attending this time. Why are you more positive now?
Well, North Lincolnshire Council, who would have been the opponent in the planning inquiry, has withdrawn. So it's going to be, I wouldn't describe it as one-sided, but the participants will be the Egdon joint venture, their barrister and our witnesses, and the planning inspector. So it may help provide better clarity on what we're proposing, and it may make it go a bit quicker.
How quickly do you see production coming online then?
I'd hope to have it in production by the summer. And another positive development was that Egdon agreed the planning conditions with the council in July. So we simply have to, in January it would be discharging conditions, and don't forget the production site is already there. The well's been drilled. It is a case of putting in place the production equipment and doing the workover to bring it onto production.
Yeah.
And we're very confident it's going to come on at 500 barrels a day.
Okay, let's move on and take a look at what's happening in Morocco. You got that award just last month, in September. How excited are you about that?
Oh, very excited. Morocco is another Atlantic margin province. It's had sporadic exploration since the 1960s. Its wells have found reservoir, source rock, but no one's found on that Atlantic margin has found all those ingredients combined into a commercial discovery. We look elsewhere in the margin, on the other side in Guyana, a very similar story. For 60 years people thought there's no working oil play here. Or in Senegal and Mauritania, no working hydrocarbon here. And over the last few years, through exploration, 5.5 billion barrels has recently been discovered in Guyana, where people thought there wasn't anything. In Senegal and Mauritania, they're talking about 50 to 100 TCF of gas. Again, in an area which people were thinking, well, that's not very prospective. Morocco is similar. It's 1,800 kilometres of Atlantic coastline, only 10 wells in the deep water. Only 3 wells have penetrated the lower Cretaceous system that we're looking at. So the ingredients are all there, and there's some evidence that big companies are getting more interested in offshore Morocco again. To the south of us, Ganel's acquired 3,500 square kilometres of 3D. Eni have recently farmed out to Qatar Petroleum, and there's a licence under negotiation directly abutting to the north of our licence. It'd be very interesting to see who gets that. You know, if it's a major oil company, then that's going to give us some endorsement. The work programme is comparatively low. One we're very familiar with, reprocessing 3D, which will then build a prospect inventory, and then we'd look to farm out to drill. And we've already had indications of interest in joining us at this early stage. And if we can farm it out now, we will.
So the farm out, presumably, will pay for everything, so you're not going to go to shareholders for money?
Well, we raised money for this last year. So, and you know, the work programme is $630,000. We put the bank guarantee up to the Moroccans in the summer. So, you know, there's no issues with Morocco.
Okay, let's move on to what's happening in the Irish business. Ireland's an interesting case. There's been some political developments recently, I think, that some investors will know about. Just update us on what's happening in Ireland at the moment, because, as I say, the land of the prospects have shifted a bit politically.
Yes. So the Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, made a speech at the UN Climate Change Conference in New York about 3 weeks ago, at which he suggested that they were considering banning oil exploration in Ireland in the future. And that sent our share price down to 2p. Yeah, it's as simple as that. We're a member of the Irish Offshore Operators Association, so all the companies that are active in Ireland, Exxon, Equinor, Woodside, Total, Eni, they're mostly much bigger companies than Europa. We're represented by IOA, and we are in the process of seeking clarification from the Minister of Energy as to exactly what did he mean. Still at an early stage, but what we have been told is existing licences will be honoured for the full term. So that means if you've got a licensing option, you can convert it into a frontier exploration licence, drill it, appraise it, and if you've got a discovery, whether it's oil or gas, you can put it into a production licence. So that's, you know, that's very important. Looking to the future, you know, they were saying if there were future exploration, then they'd only allow it for gas rather than oil. Some of that detail needs to be understood better, because you know, you can quite often have a dry gas, as we have near Corrib, but often most of the time when you find oil, there is always gas associated with it, and the gas-oil ratio, you know, will vary, but there's always gas associated with oil. So more clarity is required on that. But very importantly for Europa, not all the news was bad. You know, for the first time, there was a memorandum from Ireland's Climate Change Committee that they'd sent to the Taoiseach that was the basis for his UN speech. And in that, they state very clearly that they view Irish gas, if there is any more, as a good thing, that it will provide energy security and it will be associated with lower emissions. So if you're going to use gas, better to use your own. And that's very important for us, because our flagship project is the Inishke gas prospect in the Sline Basin, about 10 to 15 kilometres away from the Corrib gas field. You know, Ireland's its main producing gas field, and it's in decline. Came on in 2015 at around 350 million scuffs a day. Last quarter it did 245. It's a very important piece of Ireland's energy infrastructure. Ireland's got a very vigorous economy. Its electricity demand is forecast to increase. They're phasing out coal. They've phased out peat. And they're wanting an increased contribution from renewables. But as the Minister said in July, when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, you need a backup, and best if that backup can come from gas.
What's the diary looking like then for the Irish asset? Where are you going now with this as you go into 2020?
Well, the key focus right now is on getting the Inishkay prospect farmed out. You know, it's drill ready. We've got a site survey in process. I hope that we'll get that approved in the next few months. And then the next step for this license will be to acquire a site survey, which would be in 2020, and then leading to a well at the earliest in 2021. But what we're focused on right now is getting it farmed out so that someone will fund that drilling. And I don't know if the Taoiseach's speech has galvanised action, but we're certainly seeing a lot more interest in Inishkay from not only the existing major, who, you know, we had to intimate that we had an offer from back in November, but there's also other new interest, and in the annual report we refer to parties, and that's right because it's plural.
Right.
So I'd hesitate to call it, you know, nothing's in the bag until it's signed, but there are indications of competitive tension. And I think gas in Ireland, I think people are waking up to the fact it's potentially a very valuable commodity. We've got infrastructure that is has got ullage in it. Gas will be important for Ireland. It ought to be in everyone's best interests. Yeah. Ourselves, the Corrib partners, the Irish state, if we can keep the Corrib infrastructure running at 350 million scuffs a day, every day for the next 30 years.
Let's take a look at the share price, because you mentioned the fact it went down to 2p because of the Irish statement. Yep. You own, I think, what, 1.3% of
That's correct.
Now, I should say I'm also a shareholder here, so that's what has to be out there. But let me just quickly ask you about how you talk to investors about this, because of the steps lower that we've had, and the pain that clearly is obviously being felt by you as many. My shareholding in Europa has come from my personal investments out of my post-tax savings. So none of this is options or other forms of freebies. This has been my cold hard cash. So I've paid £328,000 for it. And it's not worth that right now. So, you know, of course we want to get, you know, the share price up. I think we are at a particularly low point. I think, you know, between now and the end of the year, if we get Wrestle away, I mean, that's, you know, very important. Doubling our revenues, and if we can get an Irish farm out away, that, you know, if we got Inishkay away, £1 million in back costs, and, you know, suddenly you're on the runway for drilling a 1.5 TCF gas prospect with an NPV 10 of $1 billion. So what would that take the market cap up then from to?
Well, you know, I would hope that we'd be in a double-digit share price if we did both those things.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the market will do what the market will do, but you know, there's considerable value in you know, the risked value that FinCap are carrying for us is 30p.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, for the back end of this year, 5th of November is the public inquiry at Wrestle.
Yeah.
And you aim to get that hopefully settled by the end of the year, you were saying?
Well, the planning inspectors, you know, they have a timetable for making a decision. You know, they definitely will not sit in it forever. And given that there's half the number of barristers taking, you know, there's not two sides, there's one side, I'd hope he ought to be able to process it quickly. And I suppose finally the other important point I'd make is new ventures. We have I suppose a switch in strategy that's been in place since the beginning of the year. We feel that the sort of high impact company making part of the portfolio, like we have in Ireland and Morocco, is that hopper is full at the moment, and where we're putting more attention on are for new ventures in the appraisal and development space, where geological chance of success is 100%, and where you're looking at execution risk, development risk, commercial risk. So a different, you know, a different part of risk-reward space. We've been actively processing opportunities since the beginning of the year.
How much a risk, though, is that? I mean, we were talking there about the share price, the pressure the company's under. Should your time not be better spent in concentrating on things you know are going to work, that are in the pipe already, rather than look for new challenges?
Well, we can do. I mean, we are capable of doing both. You know, we're not taking the eye off the ball in Ireland by any means.
No.
So, you know, we have the ability to multitask. You know, we do have revenues. Yeah. We can fund the company from revenue. So we are capable of, you know, working Ireland hard, which we've done. You know, a huge amount of work's going in there. We landed Morocco, and most, you know, you'd say most of the work, most of the technical work in Morocco was done in 2018. You know, so now we've got, you know, some spare capacity to look at other new ventures.
Yeah. Look, well, good luck, and thanks indeed for joining us, Hugh. It's a pleasure to catch up with you once again. Hugh Mackay is the Chief Executive of Europa Oil and Gas.